session is titled Stories of Climate and Nature Collapse in Northern Australia, the Importance of Centering Place. And I'm happy, unhappy, scared to be hosting these remarkable people from all over Australia. And each one of them brings a story of both climate collapse, but also of incredible resilience and future vision for country. So we're really privileged to have people. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name's Renee Dingo. I'm from Fitzroy Crossing. That's my dad's country, Wonaba, and my mum's side is down the bottom there in the Midwest, Mullawar, so Wayudi country. But yeah, all the way from Fitzroy Crossing.
Hello, everybody would know me from this morning. Sharon, my Kawan Jirko Jalbo from the Southern Cape York. My oneness that you would recognise as totems is Nurko. Nurko is the owl that holds us the wisdom that's passed through our ancient waterways that you call the rivers.
Good afternoon, everybody. Boigis and Tebud, families and friends. Karanui pedike lala, ka erub kosker pakanali. So I am an Erub Meuram woman from Erub Island in Torres Strait. So this is the Torres Strait. Anybody know where the Torres Strait is? Yeah, anybody been to the Torres Strait? Most of you have to come. But yeah, but that's one of the beautiful parts of Australia. So as you can see, this is the Torres Strait here, tip of Australia and Papua New Guinea. So you got two major ocean both sides, the Coral Sea and the Arafura Sea. So there's a body of water here between. So my country is into the west, east there. So my island Erub, language name, but English name is some random Lord Darnley, I'll be name him, but we call him Erub. This is Murray Island, where Eddie Mabo from, Mer. That's about 25 nautical miles south-east from Ipla. And that's Ugar, Stephen Island. So Torres Strait is made out of 5 groups. So Eastern Island, Kemer Meriam, Central Island, Kulkalgal Nation, my mother's country, all the Sankey, Reef Atolls Island. To the west, we got the Gura Maloligal and the Maloligal. So the top west, and then we got the Karoreg Aboriginal people here, my mother's mob. So TI area, when you refer TI, you mean Thursday Island, not Torres Strait. So if you say, oh, you're from TI, you mean somebody from YB and TI. But after that, Zenat Kes, Mipla. So we got 2 major languages. We got Meriamir and Kalalagawia. My background, I'm a language teacher. So I teach the dialect of the Erubam and the Ugaram people, which is a different dialect from the Mer dialect. So that's my country, Yupla. Thank you.
Wada, which is hello in Arunda. Aritni Jenna Camille Pangarda Dobson. So my name is Camille Pangarda, is my skin name, Dobson. This is my mum. She'll introduce herself in a minute. So we're from Mbandwa, Alice Springs, but our country is actually Gingerporta, which is the name now of a place that was formerly Sanitaries a mission. That's my grandfather's country, which is part of the Ulamba, which is the Rainmaker story. So we've got the Rainmaker story on one side, and then the grandmother's side is the Pencil Yam, Alachi, so that's a little bit further towards the north. So that's our country.
Wada, Arandaramora. I'm Veronica Dobson. I live in town at the moment, but I'm originally from Santa Teresa. And I do a lot of language stuff, teaching as well as writing books.
Thanks, everybody. Each of these people and each of these people's country face extraordinary pressures at the moment. And I would just like to acknowledge that it is actually really, really hard for people to keep turning up to these spaces to express what is happening in their homelands. And I would really ask everybody to hold that in their hearts as people are talking, because this isn't a once-off for people who speak to country all the time and try to be heard all the time. So if we can honour that space, that what people are talking about is incredibly sad and incredibly strong. And Veronica, we might kick off with you. I loved it yesterday. We haven't met each other before, so yesterday I said to Veronica, you know, what are you doing? She said, oh, not much, you know. I said, but in your whole life? And she said, oh, well, I wrote the Eastern Aranda Dictionary. So, all right, yeah. So would you like to express what's happening? Just what's happening, I think, with what's happening that concerns you most about what in your country?
My worries for the land that my grandfathers and that lived on before Europeans came. There's a lot of problems with it. You know, the springs are being desecrated by cattle and horses, as well as buffalo grass. We've got a lot of buffalo grass growing everywhere, and it's killing off a lot of the small grasses and plants. And when we get fire, you know, it burns trees and everything else that's in it. You know, lizards, you name it, small critters, snakes, whatever, that lives on the land. And also it kills off the bush foods that we used to live on before when we was children, you know, hunting with our grandparents and parents and other families. All that is starting to all disappear. And our waters are being ruined by cattle and horses and other feral animals. So we fenced off 2 of the springs. That was Salt and Hay Springs. Cattle can't get in there no more, but there's actually 5 springs in all told. There's Oyija and Marion Springs, Brumby Springs, also Salt and Hayes. The Salt and Hayes is the 2 that we fenced off to keep the cattle out. And, you know, the rest of it's getting ruined by cattle as well. The other 3. Colour.
Camille, would you like to expand on buffalo grass and both how it got here and the nature of it?
So for those of you who don't know, like, you know, we don't have a big mine in our backyard, which is, you know, everyone's been talking about that, and that's pretty devastating. But we've got like a silent killer that's come to our doorstep, and it's been, you know, introduced by pastoralists so that they can graze their cattle. And the buffalo grass has been around since, you know, sort of the 60s, and people have been crazily just dumping, you know, seeds all over the place. The thing about buffalo grass is that it doesn't know fences. Like cattle, you can fence them into a place, and although they're destroying country, they can do it in certain areas and they can be fenced off. Buffalo grass doesn't know that. It's seed, it gets blown in the wind, it gets taken in people's vehicles, it gets washed into places that buffalo grass shouldn't be growing, and in places where you know, cattle aren't eating it. Cattle don't really like it all that much either, but, you know, they do eat some of it on the pastoral places. But it's gone outside of those sort of confined areas, and it's become a real problem for our community. So the song up there that you saw, Beds Are Burning, obviously it's a Midnight Oil song, but that was the Southeast Desert Metal Band, and their family for us. They come from Gingerporter, where we come from. And they thought that would be an apt song to redo, because we had some really massive buffalo fires that got right up onto the doorstep of those communities. And these guys were really worried that their community was going to burn because they don't firstly have access to, like, you know, a fire department out on the community, and they also, don't have a way of controlling the buffle, so it's just gone absolutely crazy in our area. It's also threatening a lot of species, as Mum said. So around Gingerporter where we are, we've got one of the largest sort of gidgee forests in, that region. And they're trees that are really fussy about where they grow. So they grow in certain pockets, and we've got this really large pocket of them. The buffle fire went through and absolutely decimated them. So we're worried that they're not going to come back. And the thing about buffle fires is that they don't just burn once a year, they burn many times, because buffle's like 3 to 6 weeks and it's back, growing happily and waiting for the next dry. So, we've had a lot of issues around, its impact on our country, and, around Alice Springs, it's just crazy. Like, the amount of buffalo around there is absolutely crazy, and it's all through the town. And we just need like education campaigns and things like that, so people know what it is, and what they can do about it in their little, Alice Springs in the city, but also, working on how to fix it outside of the township. Our side of the country has been really hard hit because there's a cattle station that's basically right on the doorstep. Our family used to work on that cattle station for the Hayes. That's where we got our name, Hayes. And, Aboriginal people feel a connection to the stations, the pastoralists. So it's hard for us to kind of reconcile what has happened and, that history that we've had with pastoral stations. But effectively, with buffle, we haven't had a voice about it. Like, even though there are pastoral leases and there's this right to negotiate, which is part of native title, these things haven't happened with the introduction of this, mega bad species of grass that is just on steroids and growing everywhere. There was no consultation with Aboriginal people about what it might mean, what the impact would be. So we weren't part of the decision-making process. But now we've been pushed to the table as the possible solution. And for our community, we've got one of the CLC Ranger programs, and nod to the Rangers. Like, the Rangers do absolutely amazing work. But they're a tiny, tiny, tiny team of underfunded people, and they keep getting their funding cut. They're underfunded, and they're expected to deal with this problem. And the problem is, you can't believe how big this problem is. It's just everywhere. Buffalo is such a devastating thing. And, to push it back to Aboriginal people who probably would have fought against the introduction of it is really, really unfair. That's an expectation that is just beyond anything that we can do. And, we sit there, we come to the meetings and we talk to people about buffalo and how bad it is. But we're sitting there, feeling really overwhelmed about, now this is our responsibility to clean it up. We need to work better with the pastoral industry and get them to actually start doing some of the cleanup, because they're the people who introduced it to the environment. We need to push back on that. And Land Council have kind of been off fishing. Sorry, Land Council. But they haven't actually been coming to the party and getting really strong about speaking up about buffle. So it's been left to, an 80-year-old woman and myself to go and sit at the small tables and talk to the small players in the pond. We need big people to stand up against this. We need people that are in positions of power to be able to go, no more of this. We did get it declared a weed. We didn't do all the work. We worked with various different conservation groups, and Alec, there's a couple of reps that are here today that were just totally awesome, and they connected us to some of the politicians that we needed to speak to about getting something done about buffle. But we're just nobody, tiny little people in this thing. Mum should be retired, not out there trying to fight a fight that we're, feel like we're really losing a battle against. And now we've got it declared a weed, which is one tiny, tiny step forward. But now we've got to wait to see what happens with, the buffer management policy. And, there's pastoralists that are sitting on this big group at the big table. There's 4 of them, I think 4 or 5 reps from them. There's 2 Land Council people, only 1 Aboriginal person sits on that. When you think that Land Council is the land's trust for, our communities, and they have, 777,000 square miles of land that is Aboriginal land that they look after, and they've got one Aboriginal person sitting at this table, there's something wrong. You know, we need our voices back. You can't steal our voices from us. You need to give that back to us, the power and control over what happens here. We need to be invited to the table. People that are representing Aboriginal people need to step up and sit at those tables and push this issue. It's a silent killer. Most people don't know about it. But if you live in the Territory, you know how bad it actually is. And if you're in Western Australia, you also know how bad it is. But it's creeping up the road and it'll be here soon enough. People have got gamba grass here, that's a real problem. You know, wait till the buffel comes here, it might compete a little bit. But it's spreading across Australia, it's not just, you know, and it's a global issue. Like we did a little film and people were going around, you know, the globe talking to Indigenous people that are being, you know, their culture is being adversely affected to the point, I reckon, which would be, a genocide, cultural genocide. It's an act of cultural genocide. We're losing language because of all of the animals that are disappearing, the plants that are disappearing, the insects that are part of our story, they're a big creation story for us. All of those things are disappearing from the landscape and all those words are dropping out of our culture. People don't do ceremonies around that stuff anymore because we don't see that anymore. There was a plant that we found, or Mum found, she was doing a survey with Land Council Mob. They went out to Emily Gap. She found a plant out there, which is the pear plant called Angalta. She hadn't seen that for 50 years. I'd never seen it. Like, I'm a little bit over 50 now, but we won't talk about that. But I hadn't seen that plant ever. And Mum said, oh, I found Angalta. That word, I didn't know what it meant. And I'm an Aranda person, and I'm only 50 years old, or just slightly over 50. And she found this plant and collected some seeds from it, and that's the first time she's seen it for 50 years because it's not growing anywhere else because the buffaloes just destroyed the environment. Anyway, collected the seeds, and about a year or so later, a big bushfire went through there, wiped out that plant. So lucky Mum had some seeds. She gave it to a conservation group, and they have grown more seeds, which they've planted now along the Todd River. So small little victories that we have, you know, small victories we're able to have, and it's about, this plant really does show something about, you know, Indigenous resilience. It tells us that, you know, it is possible to even just one little seed to grow, you know, a whole new movement. So that's what we need. We need Land Council to step up. We need more support from people to do it. We need our rangers to get big mob of support because they're the ones that are at the front line that are fighting this battle. You know, they are the ones that are becoming responsible. We need big ranger groups. We need more money from the government to support the ranger groups. We need them to be paid properly. Like, rangers are the lowest paid people at Land Council. You know, besides I think the cleaner probably does get paid more. But, you know, they are they're actually doing the heavy lifting for everybody and trying to keep that buffel under control outside of the pastoral leases. We also need to make sure that pastoral mob get the message and the government get the message about just how destructive this is and how much it's hurting our people and our country.
Thanks, Camille. And I think the conflict between Aboriginal tenure, pastoralism, and now broadacre cropping is becoming an incredible it's always been a tension, but it is getting more tense in the face of climate change and as water declines across our landscape. Our rivers are expected to decline by 2050, 20 to 40%. That's a lot, you know, on rivers that stop flowing sometimes during the dry. And on the river story, I might go to you, Sharon, because I know you want to speak for your river.
Joel Binner is the essence of life. We call it Bunawarren. My father-in-law from Yilpra, he told me, your Bunawarren, it's like Gappo. And if you would understand Gappo, then you would understand Bunawarren. Bunawarren is flowing of life. Life, water is tasteless, it's colourless. But when you drink it, you get the sustenance that you need to survive. That Bunawarrin that flows through Cape York Peninsula is the life force that comes from our sovereign. I was told, Gugo Yalanji, Gugo is my language, was told that our sovereign is spirit, that everything that we see is intangible. You cannot see it. This is where we come from. We come from the world that you cannot see with your eyes. But if you look in your mind eyes, you will see Bunawarrin. Bunawarrin is our life force, so therefore when I live on man country, I have that connection to Bunawarrin because Bunawarrin is my life force. It is the sole purpose of our creation and our birth, our death and rebirth. The women that's on the eastern side hold more control. The law is great for Jalbo, but when you live on the western in Sunset Jilbra, you need to walk alongside Bama. Bama is man. As women, we look after the water because the water is the life essence of birth. There is hardly any birthing place through the western plains of Jilbra, Sunset, because it's all through the rainforest of the Daintree that connects to me. But the rivers that flow through the land of Gugo Yalanji needs to be looked after in conjunction with Bunawarrin. The only way is to sit down with the Bama all through the top end. I do stay on a cattle station. My brothers come and hold law through the 146,000 hectares. The reason why we got that station was because we've got exclusive native title. The Queensland government, we smashed the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander land rights. I was 5 years old when I walked with my dad down the streets of Brisbane alongside Udjuru Nunakal, old Kath Walker, and the likes of brothers from down south, Chicka Dixon, Gary Foley. This is where I come from. I was able, my dad and my family was able to live in exile because of the thought of Bunawarrin and the whole Jilbra, the Jilla, which comes from Nuchakura, which is divine law. Jilla is our term of law of the land. For us to keep sustainable and fight against the regime of the Joe Bielka-Peterson Parliament, we smashed a mighty, mighty legislation. Because in 1846, when the Chinamen, Yalgamen, came through, we used to have a lot of Chinese along our waterways. The Chinese taught us how to grow bok choy back in the days. In 1846, when the Queensland government put the restriction of selling and consuming of alcohol, opium, that reinforced the removal of Bama on country. We smashed that act in 73, 75. However, the gerrymander was that poison that seeped through Bunawarrin, the water of life, because the gerrymander was the foundation that put the power into the South African government and smashed the poor people of South Africa because of the passbook. It had to control the blacks. They got that foundation from the Queensland government through Joe Bielka-Peterson. and Cloran, which was our Minister of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Affairs, that would come up into our country and dangle sweets to our old people, but our old people said no. This is the law of Bunawarran. It's life-sustaining because it's part of the 4 elements of life. You got air, you got earth, you got fire, and you got water. Without the whole 4 elements of life, everything is unbalanced. And that's why we took to the streets of Brisbane and we fought. And we was unified, and we never had any money. We were so unified because of the cleansing and the spirituality of people who really understood Bunawarran. And those people, there was one lady that I have to maybe shame up, but she understood. She was only at that time a university student, but she heard the cries of the people fighting for the Land Rights Act to be abolished in Queensland. And that lady is Roe Hill. We are different from 2 different spectrums of the world, but what connects us was the law of Bunawarran, which is divine. We don't believe we have a human sovereign. Our sovereign is spirit. This is why we see what Use Mob can't. And if we tell you the whole aspect of our cultural identity, it will spin you out because you have to learn it from here. And that's the Julbal law that I sit with in the West. So therefore, I wanted, my family has told me, my brothers stay with me. We only a small family group, Joe Yabawara. My brothers lead the programs on country. We finally got government money from DESP. The project, because it's on Bama, on the area of man, we have a colony. We call it Imbala. My dad told us about Imbala, the dance of the butterfly. That's why we move our legs. The men and us women would move in the movements of the butterfly. The butterfly represents harmony. The only way harmony can exist is through the essence of Bunawarran, the flowing of running water. Not literal, but spiritual. And when you drink Bunawarran, you give thanks to the Almighty that people can call creation, universe, put a label. In Australia, we didn't have temples because our temple was the land. And it was governed by a higher power that is so banal, so deep in understanding, but he leaves us things, she leaves us things. But if we tell visitors from overseas, it will blow their mind because you've got to learn it from here. And the Julbal plays a big emphasis on that role of the renewal of life. And that's why I talk on the rivers of Mitchell and Palmer. We have 2 mines. One is American and one is Australian. Those mines are throwing 24/7 tailings down on the Mitchell. The Mitchell is our big catchment that flows, like I told before. Basically, my family was saying, if I could mention, and Lucy, if we could mention about the dam. The Lakeland irrigation scheme is the poison that we say, Biru, it has come into our existence, which is Bunawarran. And if it cracks, it will smash the whole of humanity. Just like Ayers Rock, the heartbeat. And she is known as she. And I'm so grateful to be sitting with the women here. Thank you.
No words. I'm just going to pass to Lala, who yesterday shared a beautiful story that defined what is happening at a very deep level.
I think by law, like for me as a Torres Strait Islander, my people are ethnically different from Aboriginal people, with Melanesian people. You can tell my area different. Cause my country is saltwater country. I know got mine where my area, which them story you share about like your country got mine, it really hard with me because I can't imagine got mine in my area. But whatever is happening on your country, the effect it come out there with my country. So, because of climate impacts, my country in a big country like your country, we only subject to a certain land mass. My sea country more big than my land, my soil. So I have to look after 20 nautical miles, 27 nautical miles? Wow. So behind my island, there's a sand cay there. The Australian northern border, northeast border goes around at Bramble Cay, which is my Kaur, about 27 miles from my country. That's why we're part of Australia, because they put a border around us. But because of sea country, we got plenty story where we human beings be adopt from sea animals. And one of the story I shared with Sam and them is about the ogernam, which is the green turtle, which is my tribal totem, my Koiklubabat, which is the principal totem of my tribe, my, sub-totem for my tribe. And of the seabirds, we call it gurebur. Gur means solwata, ebur means bird. So on the island, in our sea country, we got plenty sand cays, sandbars. And that's where we go to pick up our eggs, talk with ancestors, but we live off the sea country. And you got law between these two animals, the ogernam and the seabirds. So all the different seabirds turn noddies and all them other ones, can name it. But they have this agreement between them that they share a border between each other on the sand cay. The turtle lay over there, the birds lay over here. And the birds always get the highest part for them for up. The turtle get the lowest part, so them can just go up a bit. And because of them two agreeing with each other, like we as human beings, we got tribal borders. We agree, you stay there, I stay here. They abide by that law before we human beings, because we be adopt their way. They were your first animals. And the turtle stays over there, the birds stay there. But because of climate disruption, now you got them climate change problem, yeah, people burning coal and carbon emissions or greenhouse gas, the sea level rise. The sea level rise, it causes the border but the turtle for go inundated. You go under water now. The turtle still obey the law. No matter how big and weigh 200 kilos, I'm never go step over the borderline and go over the seabirds. So I'm respect them. And we see a lot of them in the Torres Strait. The turtle got no point, him just lay there where the turtle be born into the world. And respect the bird and say, I go lay here, even though I know that the egg go under the next full moon tide. And that's when the big respect, you can see the mutual agreement with them, the two animals. Even though the turtle can go over the bird and smash them eggs. That's a form of respect. And when you see now in this world, he not got that respect. So the turtle have to lay descendants for him for drown. And that's me, my people, we drowning. We only have that certain landmass. We can't run inland like our fellow Aboriginal brothers and sisters. They can go inland. They got all the landmass. We only have that. And when that's gone, that's it. And for my country, here on the east side, so them are volcanic islands. If you know, the Torres Strait is made out of different types of landmass. The Great Barrier Reef starts south of us. we got big reef country. Every island kids, their first job is a fisherman. So I worked as a commercial fisherman, a diver, and a fisherman for years. But then my father told me to take over the language program. My father taught the language for several decades. I took over it because my 3 older siblings didn't want to do the job. I had to do it. I respect my cultural duties and obligations because I was scared to disobey the law. And when you look at it, people ask you, they say, why are you passionate about saving country? For we black fellas, it's not passion, it's our obligations be you. It's your duty to do, look after it. And that's how I get in that space. I'm stuck there, and I go back for them Burulula family. We talk about how housing issues. That's one of the climate issues in the Torres Strait. I still living in a house that is 28 years old. The house built for this climate. You got moles everywhere. None of my family got trace of asthma. Now we got asthma in our family, asthmatics. So you got all kind of things happen. And before I end them, my people, Torres Strait Melanesian people are cultivators. We got garden. We practice garden practice. And we have this initiation practice where child, they plant their first plant. I don't know if other cultures you got, but we call them gedu ba moramor. I went through the process to plant a banana tree, look after it, and we big celebration in the village. We cut the fruit, we eat, we celebrate the child that am fitting up to plant the garden to feed them family. My daughter went through that. I have a 11-year-old, one child. She went through the practice. But the saddest part that she went through the practice, we had to personally fertile the ground now. The ground is not suitable like the way my father plant the garden. And like my father put us through the initiation, my father have to put lime now. When I grow up, we got seaweed season. We take seaweed, we put them in the ground, we put banana on it. So I come from family still hold on to 17 native species of bananas. And we take pride in that because banana is sacred to us. It's a woman. For we believe, but I'm pregnant for 9 months. And my daughter had to go through the phase where we had to put lime in the ground. And we don't usually do that. So those are the climate impacts we have. People might think the Torres Strait, because everyone say, oh, the sea level rise because of all them, federal budget. They try to give money for build seawalls and stuff. My island have other climate issues. We got landslide, we got housing issues, we got bleaching on the reef. I've seen reef, he die where I usually dive. He gone now. And my practice for using the moon and the tide for catch a certain fish, crayfish, add up. And I'm not going to use a sounder to look for fish. I still want to keep to my old way, but that's on my side of story. That's why I had to stand and talk because I feel weird, sit down, because that's how I grow up. Yeah, but that's my story. Thank you all for listening. That's what we talk about. Thank you.
My name's Renee Dingo. Come from Fitzroy Crossing, and what we refer to that area, we refer to it as the valley, the Fitzroy Valley, because Fitzroy Crossing is bigger than just the township. We've got about 4,500 people that live in and around the valley that use Fitzroy Crossing as a hub, and a lot of what we experience and a lot of, what our communities experience are experienced right across the nation, in Aboriginal communities, and a lot of our mob now are feeling disempowered, for being moved off country, being moved into other people's country. There's a book called A Town Is Born. It was commissioned by my dad, Joe Ross. It tells a story of 5 language groups, all had their own country, all had their own clan groups in that country. And they were kings and queens in their country, They ruled it, managed it, like their ancestors and their children and their children to come, Well, they all got moved onto our country, and through culture, the mob from the country who welcomed them in, let them said, oh, you can camp over there, and you can set up a community there, and because they needed a space because they got pushed off their country, over many, many years. And it all started back when the pastoralists started coming in. And you might have heard of Jandamara, Jangala man, Jangala Banaga man. My great-great-grandfather, Skinway. We've been fighting for that long against the pastoralists, colonisers, to look after country, And my dad and a lot of my elders, they've been fighting for the river for many, many years. After the mob went and fought for the Franklin, that No Damn Way campaign was taken up to the Fitzroy, because the Fitzroy is one of the last sort of untamed river systems in the world. Our country and all those neighbours that were spoken about, Auntie Ann Paulina and, Auntie Dr. Ann Paulina, all those neighbours all the way down the river, that country is replenished by that river. Even right out, when the river flows out into the ocean, the nutrients from that river and from all that country being cleansed by the river, by the floods each year, gets washed out into those, rolly shoals and those big reef systems off the coast of the peninsula there, and Broome, and everybody goes to Broome because it's a big, beautiful place. We're going to see the blue water, we're going to see the red dirt, But at the same time, there's a whole lot of things going on in the background. And these things that's been going on in the background have been going on for decades. There's big business that talk about, utilising water for agriculture. That's how they came into it. That's how they started, is using it for, agriculture and cotton, sorghum, and then fruit and veg. They're talking about now. It just keeps coming back. We stop them, they keep coming back. Stop them, keep coming back. Slowly but surely, we are being weakened at the same time. From what, in my own observations, with my own mob in the valley, we are becoming welfare dependent. And slowly but surely, bits and pieces of country are being mined. There's exploration leases and tenements all over the place that, ripping up country because some of our mob have signed over that country, But yeah, a couple of years ago, we had one of the biggest floods, unprecedented floods of the Fitzroy River. The river runs at about 28,000 cubic metres per second. So an Olympic-sized swimming pool, it'll fill that in 1 second. 1 second. Sydney Harbour, 24 hours. 24 hours. In the big flood, it was 60,000 cubic metres per second. So just over 6 hours, Sydney Harbour, fill it. No worries. That's our river. That river has a spirit. It has stories. We've got a story that connects us to Ngurrigan people up in the Gibb River Road, Mount Barnett and that. We've got a song line that comes all the way down to Dungu, what others know as Geeky Gorge, Dungu. We've got a story that comes down and it connects us with them mob, with that family. For thousands of years we've been connected, Like we are connected to the rest of the mob, all our other neighbours, all the way down to the river, to the salt. But like I said, these people have been working around in the background. They've had a plan for decades. They're going to keep coming back. They just change tack, They come around the back door and they'll find another window, find a crack in the wall. They try and get in. But that's the reality of it. They're going to keep coming. And so us, as the custodians, us as the mob looking after country, we need to keep fighting, and we need to come up with innovative ways so that we hold on to country. Strategies that we hold on to country. And, you know, a lot of my mob now, as I said, they're experiencing a lot of that dysfunction that a lot of communities face across Australia. And there's a lady by the name of Emily Smith, a writer in the US, she talks about the pillars of meaning, you know. The other night, when I flew in, I was feeling a bit hungry, so I went for a walk, go and get a feed. And then I walked past this mural, and I looked at it and I was thinking, it was very striking, just stood out to me, you know, because of the statement on there, and that situation in time was a very significant time for us as Aboriginal people. But then also in the background, I see the building, you know, the empire working in the background, putting us up front, making us look deadly. But then in the foreground, in the front here, that's an empty lot. It's got a for sale sign on that empty lot. What happens when they build something? They're going to build a hotel, or they build a restaurant, or they build a nightclub, or they build a whatever in that little empty lot there. What's going to happen to that mural? You know, it just stands out to me as what's been happening for many, many years. We get put at the front, we sign papers, you know, we look deadly for photos with government, with whoever, and then when it's all gone, when it's all said and done, and they have the power, we get put to the side. Yeah, through that biggest flood that came through, unprecedented floods in Fitzroy Crossing, where the bridge collapsed, and they had to build a new bridge. So contractors came in and said, righto, we need to build a double lane bridge now, and we've got a whole lot of opportunities for the mob because we want Indigenous content. Government said Indigenous content. So we helped, the organisation I work for, helped to, you know, facilitate the connection between community and contractors. We were fairly successful in that through the Gateway program. And it brought a lot of hope where pre-flood there wasn't very much hope. We had over 1,500 people on the CDP list, Community Development Program list. So working for the dole. That's not actually all the people that's actually on Centrelink. There are unemployed in Fitzroy Crossing. And there were a whole lot of opportunities that were put through that project. 2 bridges were built in record time, like 6 months to build a 370 metre bridge, concrete double lane bridge, like 6 months to the day, the car drove across. And amazing what the government can do when they want something to happen, you know. And so of course they have these structures, of course they have these systems in place, like native title. And I agree with a lot of the people that have come through here and spoken, and a lot of people in here. Native title, my elders, when native title came in, they said, oh, this is going to be a good thing, but our mob going to be arguing. They're going to be arguing amongst each other. They're going to cause a lot of arguments with our mob. They were very worried about what was going to happen. So it's going to be very hard to be able to stomp our feet and, you know, wave our fists about and say, we don't like that. But it's a system, this is my own opinion, it's a system that's in place. But how do we, as fellow Australians and as people of the land, and like my other father, Mr. Bin Barker, Mark Bin Barker, or my auntie Mary G, said, we are belonging people. You know, and I go back to that Emily Smith now, the pillars of meaning. You got belonging, and the old, like our old people, like those people that spoke in that Nookumba protest, the old people there. When you look on the video, it's all men there sitting around underneath that bough shed, because culturally, only the men spoke. But we don't have a lot of them men anymore. They all passed away. A lot of them passed away. So the younger people, and this is my culture. And now, like my grandmother, my OG, my dad's mum, her brother passed away. He was the speaker for our country. When he passed away, then she had to stand up and speak for country. Otherwise, it was going to be taken. But those old people may not have been educated in the white man's way, but they were wise beyond time, you know, because they had belonging. They knew who they were, they knew their stories, they knew where they were from. They belonged. We as Aboriginal people, I believe, we were born to be leaders. That is our obligation. We have to lead. There is going to be a time when young fellas are going to grow up and be leaders. We have to do that. That is our purpose. But how do we find purpose in the white man's world? We're walking in two worlds. How do we find purpose? And then through all of that, knowing where we're from, having purpose, there's storytelling. That's the third pillar within that, the pillars of meaning. Belonging, purpose, storytelling. We have to share our story because other people, we would like to know that story and be connected through the story, through our story. So having belonging, having purpose, being able to tell the story and know and understand the story and value the story breeds transcendence. And them old people, they transcended time because their words still stand today. But we are bending over. Our people are becoming downtrodden, bending over to some mob coming in with the lolly bags, with the sweets. Yeah, you want some lollies? You might say no now, but who knows in 10 years, you know. But we have a lot of smart people in this room. We have a lot of smart people across the country that want to help us and support us to be empowered, to be able to look after our country, manage our country. Like them Borroloola mob. Too deadly. You know, what they did. Like that. But do that all over. So that we can then pass on that wisdom and pass on that knowledge for the next mob to come up and stand up in that position and build strength to be able to stand in the front and understand exactly where we're headed and how to get there together as a mob, you know. So, yes, that flood, you know, water, it's people are going to keep on coming back, empowering our mob through sort of income generating activities out on community, out on their country in a culturally appropriate way, in an environmentally friendly way. You know, that's what we want, that's what we value. And I'll finish on this one. I was like Putapari and the Rainmakers. I talk a lot. I was thinking, no, I'm only going to talk a couple of minutes and I'll pass it on. But Putapari and the Rainmakers, Putapari, right? They tell the story about the mob going back to country and the Ngurura canvas. They all Fitzroy mob, Jigalong mob, Balgo mob, the Kenning Stockroot mob, right? They tell the story, and in that story, old Spider and that family, you know, they try and seize through native title Goral. Goral was their country. Right out in the middle of nowhere. It takes a day and a half to get there. Nearly 2 days. Get there. Long way. Anyway, they all put it in this Ngurura canvas, travelled all over the world, travelled to Canberra, told the stories. Fred Cheney, Deputy deputy president, they all, and the tribunal, they all assessed their applications for native title over country. Anyway, that movie they premiered in Perth, and I was at that premiere in Perth, and Fred Chaney was sitting there with Uncle Tom Lawford, of my other father, Tom Lawford, Portabuddy, and after the movie had finished, they were telling the story because Goodale, the mob from Goodale's Old Spider, their application got knocked back for some reason. Everyone else, they got their country, but they got their application knocked back. And at the end of the movie, there was question time, and somebody jumped up and said, "Why did all them other fellas get? They were successful in their application, but Spider and his gang, they weren't successful." And Fred Chaney, he stood up and he went blah 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 blah, and he finished on, well, the aspirations, the assessment criteria for the applications were based on aspirations. And the aspirations they saw, the tribunal saw, the aspirations of all those other mob were very good aspirations, but the aspirations of Spider and his gang, they weren't in line with the Native Title Act. So they weren't successful. And it sort of stands out just in that, where you've got the Native Title Tribunal talking about aspirations or assessing the aspirations of Aboriginal people. My aspirations are going to be very similar to Aboriginal people, like these mob here. They're going to be very similar because we have very similar values, similar culture. But my aspirations are going to be totally different to Fred Chaney. And I think that's going to be the struggle, is trying to get the decision makers to understand and empathise with the values of our mob and the values that we share within this room. So, thank you.